All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 56th session of Wandering Through the Big Book. We're going to begin, as we always do, with opening words. Welcome to this session of Wandering Through the Big Book. This is not a meeting of the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. No group conscience, no seventh tradition, no requirement for membership. Everybody's welcome. Our primary purpose is taking an in-depth look at the book, Alcoholics Anonymous, in order to deepen and strengthen our own recovery, to try to help others to do the same, and to try to become trusted servants of our fellowship. We are seeking conscious contact by trusting God, cleaning house, and helping others. And we're trying to improve that conscious contact by practicing steps 10, 11, and 12 every day, and applying the spiritual principles we are learning to the details of our ordinary day-to-day lives. We will begin this gathering with a moment of silence to reflect on why we are here. And now we're going to do our opening readings adapted from the Big Book. And John, you've got number 1.
I am an alcoholic, and my name is John. This is number 1. I earnestly advise every alcoholic to read this book through, and though perhaps you came to scoff, you will remain to pray. Page 0, right before page 1.
Thank you, John. And Jason, number 2.
I'm Jason. I'm an alcoholic. No attitude of holier than thou, no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. Page 18. And be quick to see where religious people are right. Page 87.
Thank you, Jason. And Buck, number 3.
Hi, Buck Alcoholic. If you are as seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe you have but 2 alternatives. One is to go on to the bitter end, blotting out out of your consciousness, how miserable you really are, page 25. And the other is to ask our Creator each morning in meditation to show us the way of patience, tolerance, kindness, and love, page 83.
All right, thank you, Buck. And Jennifer, number 4.
Hi, good morning. I'm Jennifer. I'm an alcoholic. Every day is a day when we must carry the vision of God's will for us into all of our activities. How can I best serve thee? Thy will, not mine, be done. These are the thoughts which must go with us constantly. This is the proper use of the will, page 85.
Thank you, Jennifer. And Amy, number 5.
Good morning. My name's Amy, and I am an enthusiastic alcoholic. Just to the extent that I humbly rely on God and do as I think God would have me do, will I be enabled to experience spiritual serenity right in the midst of the human calamity, page 68. Head in the clouds and feet firmly planted on the ground, page 130.
All right, thank you, everybody. Gonna get, where's the cursor? There it is. Get everybody muted, and off we go. Okay, so I'm glad to be here and glad you were here. This is our second session on step 11, and I'm making the case. I'm trying to make the case that we do everything else so we can do this step. And 10 is preparation for 11. And 12 is what happens as a result of 11. They say faith without works is dead. So what that means is I can come to an exalted understanding in 11, but if I don't put it into manifestation in 12, it doesn't mean much. And you all know how much Alcoholics Anonymous emphasizes service as a major way that we overcome our selfish self-centeredness, our self-obsession, and but how that service goes or where it comes from is what we need 11 for. I am a huge advocate of the notion of primary purpose. And if you asked me, my primary purpose before getting involved with you all, I don't know, I would have had a vague response. But today I feel as certain of my primary purpose as I've ever felt all my life. And, and the fun part about it is that rather than knowing my primary purpose, I feel like my primary purpose is to ask my creator, what is my primary purpose? Which is freeing and inspiring for me, because I don't have to figure it out. And I have carried the burden of trying to figure it out all my life. And that burden has included trying to fix you and trying to control whatever's coming at me in the world. I'm a fan of one of our AA saints, Chuck Chamberlain, Chuck C. He did this workshop, I think it was 72, for a group of men in Southern California, and they recorded it. And then a bunch of people took the recording and they turned it into the book that's called A New Pair of Glasses. And you can listen to the recording, and it's not a very good recording. And he has a squawky, almost hillbilly kind of voice. So it's hard to listen to, but when you, I don't know, I've gotten into it and I love listening to it. And he starts the whole thing off by saying that we only have one problem. And the problem is, he says, conscious separation from God. I personally, I don't think it's conscious. I think it's a subconscious separation from God. I'm not even aware that I'm separated from God because I'm not conscious of anything other than my own thinking, pretty much. But doesn't matter. The only problem is separation from God, and therefore the only solution is conscious contact with God. So the question becomes, how am I going to do that? And there's a sentence on page 72. It's the very first part of Into Action, chapter 6, Into Action. So this is after chapter 5, how it works. Chapter 5 is steps 3 and 4. And Into Action is steps 5 and 6 and 7 and 8 and 9 and 10 and 11. And then the whole rest of the book is step 12 in this presentation, in this interpretation. And the first line, it says, having made our personal inventory, what shall we do about it? And then it says 3 things. It says, we're trying to get a new attitude. We're trying to get a new relationship with our Creator, which is to suggest that we've got an old relationship, which is our old ideas, basically, that we've been carrying for however long most of us have been alive. And we're trying to discover the obstacles in our path, which is our resentments, our fears, and our sense of remorse around our selfish conduct, not just sexual conduct, but our living, interacting conduct, financial conduct, emotional conduct, all that different kind of stuff. So, so I've been trying to make the case that getting to steps 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis is the beginning. A lot of times people will talk about the work, and the work usually means going through steps 4 through 9. It's divided up. The step 1 is the problem. This is basic Joe and Charlie. Step 1 is the problem. Step 2 is the solution. Step 3 is the decision to treat the disease. And then steps 4 through 9 are the treatment, I believe, of the mental part of the disease. We're after first sobriety, then sanity, then serenity. And we're treating the mental part of the disease by examining our thinking as it shows up in resentment, fear, and remorse. And we're learning what to do about those feelings, how to pray for removal, ask for redirection, and then we do what we're directed to do in steps 8 and 9. And as a result of that, we get something that we call conscious contact, which means, oh my goodness, or oh my God, they're not kidding. The God thing is for real. And I know it enough now. I know they're not lying. And I know that the power of prayer is for real. And I have some sense of what it took to get here. But then then the work begins. That gets us to the starting line, which is life on a spiritual basis, which is our only alternative to doom to an alcoholic death. Says that at the beginning when we agnostics. And back on page 25, it says you've only got 2 alternatives. We read it this morning, going on to the bitter end, trying to fool yourself as to how miserable you really are, or seek a new relationship with your creator. So I just briefly want to talk about something that a problem. I do as much working with others as I can do. I am reading on a daily basis. I'm not going to a meeting every day, but I think 5 days a week, 5 or 6. And this working with others is a big deal for me. And I've been working with somebody who is really sitting on the fence. And it's been an enigma for me, wondering how to try to be helpful. And I think forget about that. I think the way this happens is that if I'm going to get anywhere in Alcoholics Anonymous, I have to recognize a deep need for change, that I can't go on the way I'm going on. And this is drunk or sober, by the way. This is not just stopping drinking. This is, when many of us experience, we call it a dry drunk, where we recognize that our old behaviors, our old ideas are coming back in and messing things up, and we're feeling awful. And it's what we call it dry drunk syndrome. But it's where instead of feeling led by consciousness of spiritual power, whatever you want to call it, in our lives, we live under the tyranny of an alcoholic mind that now is sober, but that doesn't mean we're still not living under its tyranny. And recognizing the need for change, if you don't want to, this person, I believe, is not sure he wants to change. And he's just going through this inner battle of well, whatever. But there's a second piece of this that I think is also very challenging. And that is to recognize, number one, I've got to change. Now, in that part we just read, I got to change my attitude. My attitude is driving me crazy. I don't want what I got. I don't want my attitude to life. But the second part that is, I think, part of step 2 is that I don't have the power to change. I want to change and I can't change. I mean, the way the book says it is, it's right at the beginning of We Agnostics. You can wish to be moral. You can wish to be philosophically comforted, You can wish to live on a spiritual basis. You can wish whatever for serenity, and you can't do it. You can't do it with your mind. You know, those dreadful words of Carl Jung to Roland Hazard, you have the mind of a chronic alcoholic, and I have never seen one single case recover. You know, and I was talking about this with someone earlier this week, and it's like, you know, I don't know why Roland Hazard doesn't say, why didn't you tell me that before we started this stuff? I mean, he spends close to a year with Roland Hazard, and not to mention the money, traveling to Europe and whatever, how he was staying up. And it's like, that's what I would have said. What the? Why didn't you tell me that at the beginning of this thing? You know, he does say, Jung does say, I've been trying to do this with you. I've been trying to bring you to a spiritual experience. But I never have succeeded with an alcoholic like you. At any rate, that's recognizing that I don't have the power to change. So the question is, what am I going to do? And I'm trying to make the case that, number one, you try to discover these obstacles, you know, try to figure out what's in the way of you having a relationship with your creator, and knowing what to do about those obstacles, which we do in steps 4 through 9. But ultimately, sooner or later, you're going to come to the, you know what, I don't know if we say it in those opening words, but right before the 3rd step prayer, it gives us a little formula to make this all happen. First of all, 1, quit playing God. You know, now we don't even understand how we're playing God, although our resentment and our fear and our sense of remorse, those are the fruits of our self-reliance. That's how we're playing God. That's the proof. That's the product of how we're playing God. Next, it says, I'm pretty damn sure it's the bottom of page 62. Next, we invite God in as our director and we're the actor, as our principal and we're the agent, as our parent and we're the child. We invite God in. It doesn't use the word invite, but that's what we're doing. We're saying, I'm going to try things differently. I'm going to try to ask you what to do instead of asking my human brain what to do. And then I'm going to try to do as you direct me, which is the 3rd step. Quit playing God, invite God in, do as directed. It shows up in the 3rd step promises that I'm pretty sure the top of 63 before the prayer. If we keep close to our new employer and perform its work well, we will get everything we need. It's a promise that if I do this, and I do act, because it's not just faith, it's faith and action, I will get everything I need. So to say this another way, often we talk about pause, ask, listen, do. That's going to come up at the end of this section that we're reading. We're on page 87. And that the pause is step 10. The ask and listen is step 11, and the do is step 12. It's the same thing. And then another line that we read today from page 68 is saying, just to the extent that I humbly rely on God, and that word humble is key, humbly rely on God and do as I am directed to do, I am promised that I will experience spiritual serenity, awareness that everything is okay right here, right now, in the middle of the calamity. It's an awesome promise. And 2 things are required: that I humbly rely on God and that I do as directed. It's the whole thing. So then the question, what we're talking about now is, how do I do that? How do I humbly rely on God? And the answer is, I pray. Prayer is our spiritual tool for inviting God into our lives and doing as we're directed to do. And it's one of the reasons why we read one of the earliest lines before page 1, where Silkworth says, I earnestly advise you guys to read this book thoroughly. And though perhaps you came to practice contempt prior to investigation, you will remain to learn how to pray. Now, it's a little more confusing to learn what to pray for. That takes a while, and there are lots of different things to pray for, but the essence of the whole deal is prayer. So we're going to pick it up where we stopped last week, which is page 87. And so just a reminder that they've said a bunch of stuff. They say, remember, we're talking 3 different parts. Part 1 is when we retire at night. We did some talking about that last week, and George sent me his worksheet for doing that, and I sent it all around. It's a wonderful way to incorporate when we retire at night, what it asks us to do. Then we're now in this section called On Awakening, what we're to do when we're waking up. And this comes straight out of the Oxford groups, early morning quiet time, when you spend, 15 minutes to half an hour, maybe more, 45 minutes. We do it with our readers, with any kind of prayer, and hopefully some kind of meditation. And usually in AA circles, we speak of prayer as me putting out my problem, issue, situation, whatever, and meditation is me trying to listen, being receptive, trying to take in, trying to be sensitive to God's guidance for my life. And the Oxford groups, their intention was to change the world by getting people to take this thing seriously. And later on in these sessions, we're going to read a 4-page pamphlet with the pretentious title of How to Listen to God. That's the title of this little pamphlet, written in the 30s by a friend of Dr. Bob's. And it's going to go through 4 little pages of how to listen to God. There's a copy in the study guide. And I'm just marching through the Step 11 study guide in the order that it's there. And so we'll be getting to it eventually. And this is straight Oxford group stuff. This is not AA so much as Oxford group. And it starts with establishing the conditions, which is an important principle that we're not in it. We learn it in amends, that you can't make amends driving down the highway, and it's not a good idea to make amends at a restaurant for most people. You have to establish conditions under which amends can be made in a healthy way, and allowing for whatever may come out of it. But this is establishing conditions so you can listen to God, and a bunch of techniques for doing that. Okay, so we're in the On Awakening part, and the first thing they say is get quiet, get still, think about your plans for the day. But before you think about your plans for the day, ask God to direct your thinking, which for me is the ultimate challenge in the book, is asking God to direct my thinking. I feel today that I understand it, but I remember reading it. My sponsor wanted me to read 83 to 88 every day, and I'm a good student, so I did as I was told. And I just remember my mind going, what? What? No. I'm not asking, I'm directing my thinking. Yeah, I'm not asking God to direct my thinking, and it remains a challenge. I have to do it kind of little reverse. Well, here's what I'm thinking. You know, here's what I'm thinking. Can you give me, and I love red light, green light. Here's what I'm thinking. Can you give me a red light or a green light or a yellow light? You know, and it's a non-intellectual way of me asking for either confirmation or no, I wouldn't go there, or let's think about it some more. But what the book says is we ask God to direct our thinking, and we especially ask that our thinking be divorced from self-pity, self-delusion, self-seeking. The only thing my ego's ever doing. I mean, those are the fundamental tools of a ego mentality. And then it says, under these conditions, we can use our brains with assurance. Well, the converse of that is, if I'm not doing that, I can't use my brains with assurance, which means I can't believe what I think. Now, this is a challenge. You know, if you've built your life on self-reliance and you're looking at all the good things in you, I'm looking around, I live in a beautiful home. It's a product of my self-reliance. I can get confused, or I can say, well, my thinking's not so bad. But this is saying, if I'm not asking God to direct my thinking and not asking it to divorce my thinking from self-pity, self-delusion, self-seeking, I cannot trust my own thinking. And this is especially true when we get into fear. You know, fear starts at a biological response to a threatening situation. It's a physical feeling, and it's necessary because we wouldn't last, we wouldn't stay here if we didn't experience fear and act on our fear. But when it gets up into here, you know, all of a sudden we're blowing the fears up, and my conclusion always is I'm gonna die. And before, I've been afraid of dying. I'm not afraid today, which I think is a signal that I'm more conscious of my spirit, which has a way. I'm not gonna say eternal because I don't know, but its lifetime is way more than a human lifetime, and I've read people saying that. And I know when I'm more conscious of my spirit, my soul, and less hung up on the momentary condition of my physical body, it calms me right down. Because I know the situation is not as urgent as my body and mind are claiming. So at any rate, the bottom line is I cannot trust my own thinking unless I have asked God to direct it. And I have especially asked that it be divorced from self-pity, self-delusion, self-seeking. And then on page 87, where we left off last time, what used to be the hunch or occasional inspiration, and I know we've all had experience of operating on a hunch or an intuition or something, and they work out well. But what used to be the hunch or occasional inspiration gradually becomes a working part of the mind. This is what we're trying to do. We're trying to get out of the intellect and into the intuitive mind, the receptive mind, the mind that's not living under the tyranny of its old ideas. Being still in experience, having just made conscious contact, we're not going to be inspired at all times. That's just the truth of it. And we'll pay for that presumption with all sorts of ridiculous actions and ideas. Nevertheless, we find that our thinking will, as time passes, be more and more on the plane of inspiration, and we come to rely on it. That's what if we do 10, 11, and 12 on a daily basis, all of a sudden we're going to experience that I can rely on this when I do it. And then I got some serious faith going on. And then I can be led. And that's the goal for me, is when I feel led, not L-E, yeah, I guess it is. No, it's L-E-D, right? Not L-E-A-D. When I feel led, what can go wrong? We come to rely on it. Now this is where we begin today. We usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that we ask to be shown all through the day what our next step is to be. That we be given whatever we need to take care of such problems. We ask especially for freedom from self-will. You could say self-reliance. We ask especially for freedom from self-will and are careful to make no request for ourselves only, may pray for ourselves if others will be helped. Careful never to pray for our own selfish ends. Many of us have wasted a lot of time doing that, and it doesn't work. You can easily say why, well, you know, I can't. It's taken me a while to see why. And I think why it doesn't work is because it's based on selfishness, based on personal selfishness. And that's not, I do not believe that's God's will for me, to be personally selfish. If circumstances warrant, we ask our wives or friends to join us in morning meditation who belong to a religious denomination, blah, blah, blah. Sometimes select and memorize a few set prayers. I don't know about you, but I am able to memorize, and it has made a major difference for me. I started with memorizing the steps, and the 3rd step prayer, eventually the 7th step prayer. I'm glad I can memorize. I know a lot of people can't, or it's difficult to do, or they won't go through the frustration of memorizing. It starts for me with writing it out. And I don't know what to say. It's not that, I don't know, but I know for me, it's been important to be able to memorize and to be able to think this stuff. And what I have found more recently, as I've been saying the 3rd step prayer a long time, and the 7th step prayer, and I love to roll one right into the other. And today I can tell you that I say them more slowly than I used to say them, and I say them with more feeling than I used to feel them. And I think I've told you, I had this very negative period. I feel like I relapsed on remorse, and I spent 2 years in a dark hole. And I would say these prayers, and I would say, God, I offer myself to thee, to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. And I would hear a voice inside going, no, you don't. It was like, who are you trying to kid? It was like, you know, that's a bogus bunch of bull or whatever. And it was painful to realize how I didn't have any positive feeling for what I was saying. But I'm also a believer, and I think we read this back in Resentment, when this minister is writing in an article about resentment, and he's telling you to pray for the person that you're resenting. Pray that they get everything in their life that you want in your life. And he says, you don't have to mean it. You don't have to like them. You don't have to want good things for them. You know, that doesn't matter. You just have to do it. And I am a firm believer that if I will do it on a consistent daily basis, my life will change. Things will change. And that's how we acquire the power to change. So I say again, the first problem is recognizing the need for change. Second is recognizing I don't have the power to change. And the third thing is asking for change through prayer. But I have to be able to listen. I can't just ask and stop there. I have to be able to listen, and then I have to be able to do what I'm directed to do. Okay, so anyway, many helpful books also. Get suggestions from the professionals, from the religious professionals. Be quick to see where religious people are right. This is huge because, you know, we're built on contempt prior to investigation. We're quick to see where they're wrong. And we use where they're wrong to keep us from acting on what is right. And so I think it's an important line. Make use of what they offer. Okay, so now we're shifting from on awakening. Now we're shifting to going through the day. And this is where the pause, ask, listen, do thing comes from. As we go through the day, we pause when agitated or doubtful and ask for the right thought or action. We constantly remind ourselves, this is like step 10 saying the proper use of the will is how can I best serve thee? That's what thy will not mine be done. That's this line. We constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show, no longer playing God. Humbly saying to ourselves many times each day, thy will be done. We're then in much less danger of excitement, fear, anger, worry, self-pity, or foolish decisions. We become much more efficient. We do not tire so easily, for we're not burning up energy foolishly, as we did when we were trying to arrange life to suit ourselves. There's self-reliance, trying to arrange my life so I can get the things I need. It works. It really does. What's the it? Well, the it is what to do in the evening, what to do in the morning, and what to do as you're going through the day. And I'm saying where I used to feel serenity was the goal, serenity is, I experience serenity as an indicator that it's working. It works, it really does. How do I know? Because I'll experience serenity in the midst of the calamity. Well, how am I going to do that? I'm going to humbly rely on God, and I'm going to do as God directs me to do. We alcoholics are undisciplined. Huh? Is that an understatement? You know, it brings up this whole idea of disciple, discipline, all this stuff. And for me, in trying to understand undisciplined, my reaction is I'm self-indulgent. That's how I'm undisciplined. I indulge myself in whatever my mind tells me it needs for me to be happy. But the only problem is that after 75 years of doing what my mind has told me to do to be happy, and I'd never experienced any happiness based on what it told me to do, you know, I've only experienced a sense of peace or satisfaction for about 5 minutes before it's on the case for something else. No, I know, but now we need this. Now this has got to change in order for me to be happy. I just no longer believe my own thinking or run along that line because it just hasn't proven true, but it's taken a long damn time. We alcoholics are undisciplined, so we let God discipline us in the simple way we have just outlined. Well, what the hell is this simple way that we just outlined? Well, when we retire at night, we do this. We settle the day down. Bill says he says it in step 10. He doesn't say it in 11. In the 12 and 12, we draw up a balance sheet. You know, we look at what went good during the day and what went bad during the day. And we ask for corrective measures. That's the key part of that. You know, if we're still troubled by something at the end of the day, we ask, maybe give me some corrective measures that I'll wake up with some new ideas about my old ideas. And then on awakening tells us what to do, which is quit playing God, invite God in, do as directed. And then as we go through the day, we pause, we ask, we listen, we do. But that is not all. There is action and more action. Faith without works is dead. Next chapter is entirely, the rest of the book is entirely devoted to step 12. Okay, so so I just want to go back to something that we talked about earlier, and that is the Emmett Fox's 7 mental ideas, and it's in a book, one of his books called Make Your Life Worthwhile, but it's also in the Daily Reader. And in the Daily Reader, it's at the end of January. And he puts forth these 7, he calls them great mental ideas. And they work out. And so I've written this thing up, written a summary of this thing up it's in the study guide for step 6. And it's page 4 of that study guide. So I don't know if you've been, I send you out all these PDFs, and I've been hoping you would print them and put them in a little notebook, and then you could just flip to your notebook and find this. But I know many of you have it on your computer somewhere. So that's what I'm working from. And when we get to open discussion, if you want me to resend you the PDF or whatever, let me know. So these 7 things. The first 3 are general principles, and the last 4 are specific methodologies. So the first principle, and the one on which everything else is based, is called what you think upon grows. What you focus your mind on, consciously or unconsciously, and this is all the ultimate challenge. What you think in your mind is going to grow in your life. And if you're thinking scarcity, scarcity will show up. If you're thinking abundance, abundance will show up. If you're thinking ego and ego satisfaction, and you're comparing and all the other stuff that egos do, it's going to get bigger in your life. If you dwell on fear, it will get bigger in your life. And on the other hand, if you dwell on spiritual reality, by whatever name you call it, it will grow in your life. So whatever you allow to occupy your mind will grow in your experience. The law of attention. Dwell on fear, it gets bigger. Dwell on love, it gets stronger. So that's the fundamental principle. Number 2 factors. Mental work involves a piece of knowledge and a charge of feeling. And of those 2, the feeling is way more powerful than the content. So a good thought but no feeling, not much happens. Wrong thought but lots of feeling, a bad condition grows. Feeling takes priority over content every time. And then this little side note, according to A Course in Miracles, there are only 2 fundamental feelings, love and fear. And this says on our path, it's gratitude and service, or fear and selfishness. Those are my 2 options. Fear and my selfish response to fear, or love and my eagerness to try to be of service to life. So this is the killer, number 3. And this is the real purpose of prayer, is to try to re-educate the subconscious. What he says on this one, in the same way that feeling is more important than content, this one says what's going on subconsciously is more powerful than what's going on consciously. And that's why it's so important that we go through this step 4, where we're bringing up to consciousness, perhaps for the first time, what underlies our resentments, what our fears are really about as we chase fears down, and what our sense of remorse, what's the cause of our sense of remorse. That's how we bring this subconscious stuff up. So when the subconscious mind has accepted any idea, it uses all its resources to bring about what that's saying is my subconscious has a primary purpose. Maybe I'm aware of it, maybe I'm not, but it's going to move toward that primary purpose regardless. And so what I feel prayer does for me is it changes my primary purpose, which is to love, honor, and serve the Creator. That works for me anyway. To try to get that into the subconscious mind and thereby change what my subconscious mind is focused on. So when the subconscious mind is used to bring about its purpose, with negative, fearful ideas comes sickness, trouble, failure. With positive, loving ideas comes healing, freedom, success. Harmony results from positive, constructive, kindly thoughts, patient, tolerant, kind, and loving. What do we really want? The fruits of restless, irritable discontent, or happy, joyous, and free? Our steps are a way of re-educating our steps. And in this case, what I'm trying to say is prayer. Step 11 is a way of re-educating the subconscious mind. And then he gives us 4 tools. The first is the law of substitution. Second one is relaxation. Third is practice. And the fourth is the law of forgiveness. And of those 4, number 4 is where we all run into trouble. Substitution just means but it's his golden key to life. Substitute a positive thought for a negative one. You can't, if I say stop being afraid, you're not going to stop being afraid. If I say try to, what he says, see God in this, see God, try to see the power of God right where you think you're seeing trouble. Relaxation just means that in mental work, forcefully exerting personal willpower is counterproductive because it intimidates and halts the creative mind or the intuitive mind. This is why being relaxed and still in prayer and meditation is so important. You can't command God's presence, but we can invite spiritual power into our awareness. We can ask God to reveal itself to us. Law of practice these principles. We all want a light switch or a drug or a operation. This is practice. And daily. And finally, law of forgiveness, the total giving up of personal human judgment, the total giving up of comparing, wanting, idealizing, whatever. Judge not lest ye be judged, because what goes around comes around. Judgment is a strategy using projection and self-justification to defend against personal selfish fear. Any rate, so I got to stop. So, step 12, having had a spiritual awakening, what does that mean? And I'm going to say, for me, it means, number 1, awareness that there is this whole dimension to life beyond, before, deeper than my actual life, my human life, and my opinions about my human life as they come through my brain. That there's a whole nother dimension. And although I was theoretically aware of it before coming in here, my awareness of it grows on a daily basis. But there's no doubt for me now. And the second part about it is the power of prayer. I know prayer is for real, And I know prayer works. And what we'll be talking about next time is getting specific about prayer. So I'm just, Amy likes to introduce herself as an enthusiastic alcoholic, and absolutely. I'm just, what's blowing my mind, and that's how my enthusiasm for AA just, I don't know, it just knows no bounds. And I'm just so glad, so grateful to be a part of this thing. And so thank you for your attention. I'm going to gong this gong, and Buck's going to shut off the recorder, and we'll have some open discussion. Thank you very much for being here. Even those of you that I can't see your faces because you don't have your videos on. Okay, thanks a lot. Hope to see you next week.